Caitlin Clark came off the top, scanning the floor as a screen formed in front of her. But instead of taking it, she made her move, going right away from the coverage, right into JJ Quinley's path. From the second, their shoulders collided. It was on. JJ did not merely defend. She pestered, bumped, and jabbed with every step, making it clear she was going to test Clark at every turn. Clark kept pushing, slicing into the lane through the pressure, absorbing contact the whole way. There was no space, no relief, just arms and hips in her way. And then came the moment JJ went for the swipe. She didn't get the ball. The body of Clark was hers. The contact sent Caitlin crashing hard to the floor, her back smacking the hardwood just as she went up for the shot. Right away, first there was silence. The kind of silence that falls when something serious happens, then the whistle. JJ Quinley had knocked Caitlin Clark to the ground. Clark didn't pop up right away. She laid there for a second, staring at the ceiling, not in pain, just processing. She'd been hit hard. She rolled to her feet, and all that was there was that icy, focused stare. No drama, no flailing arms. She didn't look at JJ. She didn't argue. She walked to the line like someone who knew exactly how she was going to respond. And that's when it started. Because whatever JJ thought she was going to gain from that foul, some edge, some momentum, some kind of message, it didn't land. Next wasn't just basketball. It was a statement because Clark took that hit and made her regret it. What happened next is as follows. Quarter by quarter. The opening quarter wasted no time setting the tone. Dallas struck first, moving with pace and confidence. Enrique Enwali pushed the ball hard off a defensive rebound and didn't hesitate. She fired a lead pass down the court to Liweru, who was already ahead of the pack. Indiana's transition defense had no chance of catching. Up and Weru finished the layup uncontested, putting the Wings on the board within seconds. But the Fever responded with a sequence that captured their identity. Disciplined, connected, and unselfish. Aaliyah Boston attacked the lane with force, drawing the defense toward her. Then kicked the ball out to Lexi Hull on the perimeter. Hull quickly swung it to Caitlin Clark, who was already squared up several feet beyond the three-point line. The pass was crisp, the shot even cleaner. Clark's deep three hit nothing but net, and just like that, Indiana made it clear. They were ready for a fight. Dallas didn't blink. On their next trip down, they ran a baseline out-of-bounds play to perfection. Paige Beckers caught the ball near the mid-post, faced up and smoothly drained a soft jumper over her defender.
Oh.
The Wings looked sharp and composed, but Indiana kept matching them possession for possession. On the next Fever attack, Clark ran the show again. She waited patiently as Kelsey Mitchell cut back door, then delivered a perfectly timed bounce pass between two defenders. That led to an easy layup. It was subtle, quick, and devastatingly effective. Moments later, Clark showed she wasn't just orchestrating the offense. On defense, she read a pass early, jumped the lane, tipped it free, and immediately took off the other way. She finished the play herself, going coast to coast for two. It was the kind of all-around moment that reminded everyone why she draws so much attention. With just over 6 minutes left in the quarter, Clark drove hard to the rim and took a heavy foul. She had missed a screen at the top and shot downhill, but she was hit in midair before she could fire. The whistle came late. The contact was clear. And the crowd briefly fell silent, but Clark stood right up. No theatrics. Walked to the free throw line and calmly sank both shots. Dallas continued to lean on Beckers, who drained a three off a handoff after a solid screen from Yeru, but Indiana immediately responded. Clark and Boston ran a sharp give-yo at the top, which drew in the defenders. And Clark fired a pass inside to Natasha Howard for an easy bucket under the rim. In the final stretch of the quarter, Beckers created more space. She rejected a screen, found Azia James in the corner. James didn't hesitate. She rose in rhythm and buried the three. With confidence, a clean finish that reflected how well Dallas was moving the ball. On the following possession, Beckers once again asserted control. Using a controlled bump to create just enough separation from her defender, she finished high off the glass. With a smooth touch, showcasing both finesse and control, But Indiana didn't let the quarter end on anyone else's terms. As the clock wound down, the Fever missed a shot, but Michaela Timpson battled hard on the boards, muscled her way into position, secured the rebound, and powered it back up through contact. The putback was a momentum changer, not just because of the points, but because it came from effort. When the buzzer sounded, Indiana held a narrow 28-27 lead. Both teams had traded punches, but between Clark's poise, her early highlights on both ends, and the Fever's collective energy, the tone was already shifting. The contact she took, that was just the beginning. The second quarter began with Ari McDonald sizing up her defender at the top of the key. She didn't have much room, but she didn't need it. With a quick hesitation and a sudden pullback, she created just enough space to rise up and bury a confident three-pointer. Right on cue, it was Clark in command. She moved quickly. On the very next possession, she attacked downhill with force. As defenders collapsed toward her, Clark didn't force the shot. Instead, she slowed down just enough to find Natasha Howard cutting into the lane. The pass was sharp, perfectly timed, and Howard finished the play in one motion. The Fever weren't just playing fast, they were playing smart, and Clark was orchestrating every note. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Quinterly, who had sent Clark to the floor earlier, tried to make a move of her own. She drove hard toward the basket with her head down, but Clark held her ground. She rose up, met Quinterly at the rim, and swatted the shot clean. Before the ball had even touched the ground, the crowd broke out in cheers. Clark didn't even pause to celebrate. She grabbed the rebound herself and launched a full-court pass ahead to Sophie Cunningham, who caught it in stride and laid it in without contest. Indiana kept their foot on the gas. On their next set, Clark and Boston ran a high-action two-player sequence. Clark swiftly located Boston after she popped to the mid-range instead of rolling to the rim. The jumper from just inside the paint was smooth, and the Fever's lead continued to grow. Dallas received a response at long last, but only after Clark lost her balance, leaving Indiana helpless. Quinterly took advantage and found Giroux under the basket for the uncontested finish, but that little crack in the armor didn't last. Clark pushed the pace again and found Lexi Hull streaking ahead. One bounce pass later, Hull was spotted up from the wing and drilled the three in transition. Dallas tried to stay in it. Page Beckers ran off a tight off-ball screen and hit a deep three of her own, but Indiana didn't flinch. They came right back with Boston faking a handoff at the top, fooling her defender and driving straight to the cup. She absorbed the contact and finished strong, then converted the AN1 at the line. As the clock wound down, Clark delivered the final blow, guarded tightly near the arc. She froze her defender with a subtle jab, then stepped back into a high-arcing three. It hit nothing but net. The Wings scrambled to get one last bucket before the half, and Hines Allen found James for a corner triple, but it didn't do much to change the outlook. By the time the halftime buzzer sounded, Indiana was up by 22, but it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about control, tone, and momentum. And all of it belonged to Caitlin Clark and the Fever. Caitlin Clark wasted no time making a statement to open the second half. Working in isolation on the wing, she didn't rush. With a few composed dribbles, she slowly backed her defender down, probing for space. The second she felt even a sliver of daylight, she stepped back with a smooth move and buried an 18-feet jumper like it was part of her pregame routine. It didn't stand out, it was just pure control. Moments later, before Dallas could even catch their breath, Clark grabbed the ball again and immediately looked up court. What followed was a laser of a pass nearly 3/4 of the court, hitting Kelsey Mitchell perfectly in stride. Mitchell didn't even have to break her rhythm. She gathered the ball in one motion and finished at the rim without resistance. It wasn't just about speed, it was about precision, and Indiana had both. Dallas tried to get something going by going inside. They found Lee Warrow deep in the post, and she made the most of her position. Using solid footwork and a strong pivot, she spun around her defender and dropped in a soft finish off the glass. But even the good possessions for the Wings felt like brief pauses in Indiana's momentum. Clark continued to orchestrate. This time, she ran a classic two-player play with Aaliyah Boston, who scored after the screen and went to the free throw line. Clark hit her in rhythm, and Boston didn't hesitate, and another clean jumper dropped. Once again, her mid-range game is deadly. Next trip down, it was Mitchell's turn to operate. Running nearly the same set with Boston, she used a quick rescreen to shake free, and when Boston rolled into the lane, Mitchell delivered a perfect bounce pass. Boston gathered and knocked down the short jumper from 8 feet out. It was starting to look automatic. Dallas needed an answer, and they finally found a sliver of space on the perimeter. After a bit of chaos, Isaiah James found herself left wide open on the wing. Louisa Gilsota recognized it and whipped the pass over just in time. James set her feet and nailed the open three, but it only halted Indiana's flow for a moment. Not long after, Paige Beckers gave the crowd something to remember. Working from the wing, she squared up her defender and went into a textbook rip-through drive. It looked like the kind of move made famous by scorers like Dwayne Wade or Kevin Durant. She didn't get the whistle, but it didn't matter. She rose through contact, hung in the air, and somehow dropped in the shot off balance. The crowd roared. In disbelief, Indiana didn't panic. They came right back with Clark initiating a screen and roll with Dantas. As the lane tightened, Clark squeezed in a perfectly timed pocket pass between defenders. Dantas handled it smoothly, absorbed the contact, and finished the tough layup as the Fever bench jumped to their feet. Beckers wasn't done, though. She kept pressing the issue, attacking Sophie Cunningham in transition and creating contact with a bump before finishing the layup.